Greetings, Panthers. Welcome to the first ever Student Affairs Talk Show, Parking Chair Chats with Dean Bonner. It's kind of like a pandemic-friendly edition of Writing in Cars with Kenyon. And so if you're not familiar with Writing in Cars with Kenyon, I encourage you to go to our Student Affairs YouTube channel to check that out. We have some really cool episodes that highlight a lot of our really cool students. And I think you all understand why we haven't done Writing in Cars with Kenyon. It's just not safe to do it, but they were really fun when we did them, and hopefully we can continue those in the near future. But today, for this talk show, I'll be talking about mental health, wellness, and resilience with two of our very own Pitt students and a University Counseling Center clinician. This is a really important topic to me for a number of reasons. I think, like many of us, life can be stressful and sometimes can be overwhelming, and really focusing on how you're managing that and making sense of the world, how you're coping with the different sort of things in your life has been really important for me. I learned that over time as a student. I also know that when I was a college student, I didn't know much about our counseling center at the school that I attended. And there were many times that I think I struggled, and actually I didn't think I struggled because I didn't have anyone to really talk to other than my roommate and help me process and make sense of what I was feeling and experiencing at the time. And so as I grew older and became more aware of people who are really charged with and qualified to help you, sort of process the things that you're feeling and thinking, I knew that this was something that I wanted to do. And in fact, I started in my graduate program in college, in my master's program, thinking I would be a counselor, serving as a counselor, have a degree in rehabilitation counseling. I think the importance of taking care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually is really important. And I've learned that throughout my life. And I think as a professional, it's also really important to continue that throughout my professional life and with my family. And I think it's something that I'd like for us to talk about today with some really cool people who will share their experiences. So that's why it's important to me. We also know that this topic is important to students, especially now during the pandemic when everyone is experiencing more stress and anxiety and potentially social isolation and depression. So my guests for today are Dr. Sean Moundas, a clinician in the University Counseling Center, Danielle Floyd, a sophomore economics major and chair of the Student Government Board Wellness Committee, and last but not least, Morgan Pierce, who is a second-year PhD student in history and incoming president of the Graduate and Professional Student Government Board. So welcome, Sean, welcome, Danielle, and welcome, Morgan. Thank you for being here. I want to ask each of you how the pandemic has affected you, and in particular, how have you taken care of yourself during this challenging time?
Like many people, my circumstances have definitely changed with the pandemic and how that's kind of affected everything. And I've had overall just increased anxiety with, especially what's going on in the world right now. However, some ways I really try to take care of myself and remaining active. Physical activity is definitely my main way of relieving stress. I also really enjoy crafting and painting with my friends on the weekend whenever I have time, as a good stress relief too.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic's been really challenging for me. I think the lack of structure really affected my productivity, my mental health. Um, I've been working to give myself grace during this process, just recognizing that not everything is going to be perfect or has to be perfect. And like Danielle, I've also been really making an effort to be physically active, to get outside of my apartment every day. And I picked up bread baking in the classic millennial way. Um, so had to have a pandemic hobby. But it's been really great because it's very tactile and it's something where I can turn off the parts of my brain that I'm using, very critically whenever I'm engaged in coursework and research. And I can do something different. So that separation's been really key for me.
Thank you, Morgan. Yeah, I really appreciate the idea of grace, giving yourself grace is really important. I've talked a lot about that to my staff over the years, so thank you for adding that. And then this idea of picking up different new hobbies, and I think you and Danielle mentioned that. So luckily, we didn't know that before this show because we would have probably asked you to share some of your art with us. But thank you for sharing during the show. So okay, Dr. Moundas.
Yes, yeah, I can relate to the experiences of both Danielle and Morgan. Circumstances have definitely changed. I've had a renewed appreciation of self-care and what that means in this context. I can relate to the cooking and baking, at least somewhat, doing a lot more than I did before. And walking, kind of, we all been talking about physical activity. Walks have meant a lot to me whenever possible. I've really also appreciated still being able to connect with folks remotely. I think the power of that personal connection and self-care and community care has been further reaffirmed in the context of the pandemic. I think as well, the experiences related to grace, I can connect with that a lot. I've been doing a lot more in terms of meaning finding and meaning making, as well as self-compassion and gratitude. And I think both experiences, all experiences, have been helpful for me.
You all mentioned so this idea of we talk about the virtual world and not being able to see a lot of people in person, but trying to get out and exercise. But I'm just curious, and anyone can answer this question. Has there been a silver lining to this virtual community? Like, have you found that you've been able to connect with more people or stay in touch with people that you normally would have or not? Just what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there was a piece that came out. I forget from what news publication, talking about the loss of those little interactions, the more casual, the interactions with acquaintances, like at the coffee shop, that I've been missing. But one of the things that I think has been a silver lining is the connections I'm sustaining with my family and friends have been in some ways deepened by the pandemic, because we're much more prone to talk about very serious issues about what's going on in our lives and how we're being affected emotionally, intellectually, and calls that last longer than they perhaps would have previously. And so I think that's been a positive, to come out of this.
Yeah, and just adding on to what Morgan was saying, I actually did my entire fall semester virtual, and in that time, I really honed my relationships with my family, with my friends, especially my friends from high school. I haven't really gotten to see. I think another kind of silver lining that kind of came out of the pandemic is just as like a student leader and just being a student here on our campus, I've really been able to just pull from different pots of different people and really be able to connect with different student groups, and just going to their events that I really wouldn't have been able to, if pre-pandemic, because nowadays we don't have to walk anywhere. It's just a Zoom, click away and everything. So I think it's definitely a big positive out of the pandemic.
Can you maybe share some things that maybe you've heard from other undergraduate students about, how they're feeling and how this year has been for them? And then in particular, like as your sort of service on the wellness committee of SUB, what are some things that the wellness committee is doing to support students and connect students this year?
I think the number one thing that students are really battling with is just the onsets of new anxieties that just have arisen with the constant changes that we just have to adapt to as students, and with the added factors of kind of what's going on in today's world. With freshmen, I've seen how freshmen weren't able to really build that community with, because we're not allowed to have the different events that we kind of had like in person, and because of that we weren't able to a lot of freshmen were able to really like hone those different relationships that we kind of have, especially like during week we're on here, and particularly with upperclassmen. I think a lot of upperclassmen missed out of the classroom experiences. They're really crucial, out of graduating and thinking about what is commencement going to look like this year. So I think those are some of the general concerns. However, I think the number one comment I've gotten from students on what they kind of want to see out of the university is making sure that student well-being is priority for next year. I think one way that I think SGB and my committee has kind of been helping with that is working with different organizations such as the Mental Health Student Coalition and the University Counseling Center to establish mental liaisons in all undergraduate organizations, because by engaging students and teaching them and giving them the resources about how to really engage in topics about mental health when they don't usually do that in the organizations, really helps opening up to the topic more, and overall helping them, giving the resources to make sure that they can better utilize those things to connect with their fellow peers.
Thank you and the wellness committee for all the work you're doing, and I 100% agree. Next year, our goal is that we'll be in person. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to rebuild and build that type of community that we all love and need at this point. So I look forward to working with you in your new capacity next year, though, as a board member. Okay, Morgan. So graduate and professional students, also students may have a little bit of a different experience than undergraduates, but what are you hearing from graduate and professional students about their experience, and what particular concerns do they have?
Yeah, I think that graduate students have are an interesting population because they have many of the concerns as students that are very similar to undergraduate concerns, but they're often older. It's been a real struggle for graduate and professional students who have kids. Because childcare is just hard to come by, and if you're a working professional, that's something that you have to deal with in addition to coursework. And then kind of on the flip side of that, a lot of graduate and professional students have parents or close family members who are older and might fall into those higher risk categories. So I think that's put a lot of stress on graduate students that just really creates some feelings of isolation and insecurity, especially I think we're really split graduate students, those who were able to move back to be closer to family, or those who stayed in the city. And I think that creates it's a hard choice to make. And I think it creates a difficult situation.
In your role next year as president of the Graduate and Professional Student Government Board, is this a topic that your board will be looking at in terms of what's your thoughts about how, the experience may be different next year? What are you looking forward to doing some things that you weren't able to do this year for graduate students?
Absolutely. I think we spent, I'm also a current executive board member on GPSG. I'm currently the VP of committees, and I'm very excited to transition into the president's role next year. This year, it really felt like as a board that everything was coming so hard and fast at us that we were really just trying to keep up. And so I'm really excited to move forward and be able to dedicate more time and effort into putting together sustained programs for our graduates. I think making sure that our graduate and professional students are a part of the conversation on a university level is really important. And then I'm also happy to announce that GPSG has committed $100,000 to the Student Emergency Fund. So that will go to helping our students in need and to bridging those gaps in their finances. So we are really happy to announce that that we have committed $100,000 to the Student Emergency Fund, and are very excited to see that money put to use.
Thank you, Morgan. We are appreciative of that too. I know our students will really benefit from the support from the Graduate and Professional Student Government Board, as well as the support that the Student Government Board has provided to that fund and Student Affairs and other folks who donated. Our Pitt Day of Giving, there was a huge support for that fund. So I think all of that it makes me smile, and I think knowing that money is going to support our students makes it even more meaningful. So thank you all. So I don't want to leave Dr. Moundas out. So let's talk to an expert on mental health for a second. And if you can share with us, what issues are you and other counselors seeing in the health center, obviously, in general, during this year, and then what are some tips and advice you have for cultivating wellness and resiliency?
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to hear about all these initiatives happening too and coming up. So yes, at the Wellness Center, we've experienced students coming in with a number of different presenting concerns, some specific to COVID-19. So lower mood or feeling down, increased nervousness or anxiety, challenges and or changes, transitions with relationships. COVID-19 as well, the pandemic seems to have had an impact understandably, on focusing, at times on motivation, overall concentration in academics, as well as this feeling of missing out on experiences, which of course, all of this is very valid and understandable. And so we've seen a myriad number of different challenges and experiences students are presenting with, as well as importantly, strains. Definitely students still are coming in, of course, experiencing strains and resiliency too. And that's part of our role as well in working with students to further identify and cultivate those strains. In terms of some other concerns folks may be coming in with, definitely so much continues to happen in the nation and world, and students may be experiencing effects of that, right? Particularly effects of any experiences of bias based on identity or identities. And so navigating those experiences, including with minority stress we're here to provide support as well through individual counseling, relationship counseling, and or group counseling, as well as, very importantly, our same-day support, our virtual same-day support, which is available. We're available via phone 24/7 through our main phone number as well. So just want to emphasize that too. In terms of some tips and guidance regarding cultivating wellness and resilience, a number of different pieces come up for me. I would say doing an overall kind of stock and assessment whenever possible of self-care. What self-care practices we are engaging in, what self-care practices we maybe want to engage in more whenever possible, and identifying some potential barriers to that too, and then as well identifying some supports to those barriers. And people don't have to be alone in that experience. And again, through the Counseling Center, we're here to help with that process as well, whether that's through our direct services, as noted before. We also have available therapy assistance online, or TAL, available through the Student Affairs and Counseling Center website, which is a self-help resource, which has a lot of great modules within it for folks to engage in, whether they're experiencing counseling or not. And then we also have our wellness workshops too. So definitely a focus on self-care and what's possible. And that could be and feel different for every person. I mentioned for myself, and we've all mentioned some different ways, like physical activity and cooking. For some folks, it may be different, right? It may be doing another kind of hobby altogether, right? It may be some more alone time actually, right? And that may be helpful for someone's self-care. So really taking stock of what's helpful for us and practicing self-care, because I think it's a skill that generally takes some practice. I would say as well, having a further awareness of what are our signs of stress or distress, right? Because again, there could be some commonalities, but they can vary for each of us sometimes. And recognizing when additional support may be needed. And that may be support from friends, from classmates, from family members, from other people in our lives. It may be support from the Counseling Center as noted prior. And so having increased awareness of what are our cues. I know for me, if I'm starting to feel kind of less patient or more frustrated, that's one of my cues. Again, that could be different for each and every person. I think an awareness of that. I think lastly, just for now, I think whenever possible, and again, I realize this could be challenging, but sort of taking stock of maybe the silver linings, the gratitudes, however big, small, or in between, that are happening within our lives, and trying to cultivate some time for that whenever possible. I think sometimes that can go a long way. I know for myself, like through the pandemic, I've had an increased awareness and increased appreciation, I should say, of access to my own access to basic needs. Felt grateful for that before, but even more so now, my access to basic needs and then some, certainly. So I would say, just kind of in summary, a focus on self-care whenever possible, certainly a focus on support for ourselves whenever needed, as well as cultivating positive experiences whenever and feelings, as well as gratitude and an overall awareness of possible signs of stress or distress.
Thank you. That's
Sure.
really helpful. I know, well, you said one thing that resonated with me, this idea of alone time. Like for me, part of my self-care is alone time, right? It's like I just need some space and time. I'm an introvert. And so like typically when I'm around a lot of people, I need to go home and just recharge for like a half hour is really all I need. And that really helps me. The days I don't have that are the days that I feel the most stress. So appreciate you saying that. And then, Sean, you mentioned this, but maybe just, if a student is feeling distressed right now, what do you suggest they do?
A very important question. Thank you for asking that. So a number of things. I think engaging in self-care practices, self-help practices, as noted earlier, and not, whenever possible, not being alone in that distress, particularly if it's at a level that feels intense, or even in a level where someone may be concerned about their safety. Right? So I would say definitely, please reach out to us immediately, any student who's feeling that way. Again, our phone number, the main Counseling Center phone number, provides support 24/7. And so when calling, there's also the opportunities to really just speak with a clinician. We have our same-day virtual services as well available, our drop-in services, Monday through Friday. And so someone could seek out whether that's a one-time appointment, if that's what's needed in the moment, or further resources within the center, or further resources outside the center as well, or some combination. I would say as well, if someone maybe, because this can happen too, and I completely understand that, someone may not be as comfortable reaching out to professional support for a variety of reasons right away. I would say find someone else in your life with whom you feel comfortable sharing at least maybe some of what's going on, or who could provide some support. And they may be able to help you to reach out for further support if needed as well. So those are some pieces that are coming to mind in the moment. On our website, there's a lot of great resources, certainly in general, but a lot of great resources too. We have a whole availability of resources for crisis hotlines and other support hotlines if someone wants to utilize those resources, some of which are more population specific too, I wanted to add.
Dr. Moundas, can you give us a little bit more information about the Counseling Center? I don't want to assume that all students are aware of the Counseling Center and how it's set up and the structure, so it might be helpful for our viewers to know a little bit more about the center, who's the director, and sort of the office hours and the staff.
Yes, I also wanted to share about the Counseling Center. We have a team of talented, diverse clinicians, the front desk staff, and very importantly too, our services are covered within tuition. There's no insurance billing, and they're confidential as well. Except in certain emergency situations. So we are within the leadership of Dr. Jay Dar and his great leadership, and as well as we have a talented team of clinicians and front desk staff. So thank you.
So I'm going to go off script. I have one more question for our students. I want you to think back, Danielle and Morgan, to yourself, March 2020. Knowing what you know now, what would you say to yourself in March 2020?
It's gonna be okay. This is going to be a long journey, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Make sure that you are staying connected with your friends. Keep making sure you are checking with your parents or your loved ones. And there's going to be light in the tunnel. I think that's like just what I'm thinking right now. Of course, everything's edited and might come back and add on after Morgan says it, but you know.
Thank you, Danielle.
I think I would have given myself some reassurance that I would have said your family's going to be okay. All of my family's in healthcare, and so my dad works with in the ICU with COVID patients every day. So there's a lot of anxiety and fear on top of all of the uncertainty that we had in March of 2020. And so I would have said it's going to be okay. I also would have said buckle up and prepare, because it's going to be longer than everyone thinks it is. And I think that we've really seen that over the last year of the uncertainty. I think that that's been a big source of stress, is us just, getting information piecemeal as it happens. And the hope of, well, when will we get a vaccine and when will that be distributed? And that does bring a lot of hope, but that anticipation also creates a lot of, it raises your stress level. It raises that kind of adrenaline of is it going to end soon? And I think that uncertainty has really caused a lot of stress. And if I could go back and talk to myself in 2020, I would say, prepare for the long haul. And that would have greatly benefited my mental health. The other thing I would tell myself in March 2020 is get yourself a good therapist, because it's really important. I think reaching out to the counseling center or therapy, any kind of mental health professional. I know it's been really helpful for me, and I can only highly recommend it.
A lot of those pillars of wellness that I usually used to, they were fine before the pandemic, that I kind of focused on, I think kind of fell through. And I think I would have just told myself to make sure you're staying connected with your friends, make sure that you are having that alone time of yourself to maybe, spend to watch a movie that you really enjoy, get a milkshake if you want, to just kind of take care of yourself. But I think those are kind of the things I would have told myself. Yeah.
Thank you, Danielle. Yeah, I have to be careful. The Milkshake Factory is one of my favorite places. I can't, you know, they'll probably edit this because they'll consider it a promotion or something. But anyway, I love the Milkshake Factory. And they have like non-dairy milkshakes. They taste really good. So,
I've not been. So should I go? Like,
oh my
I,
goodness.
okay,
Yeah. Yeah, I
okay.
love the non-dairy ones, yeah.
Yeah.
I live in Shady Side, so I'm a Millie's girl. So
Millie's is cool too. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks, folks. That was great. I had a great time talking to you, but it's time for our new segment. And the segment is called True or False Kenyon Quotes. So I'm a little worried about this segment, but I'm all in on it. So let's have at it.
Okay. So one quote, true or false? The broth itself, they should just bottle that up as medicine, like if you had a cold or if you were feeling down. Did you say this, true or false?
That is true. I said that.
Nice.
Yeah, I was talking about the broth from. I go to this Thai restaurant, and there's like a see, this is how I got into this quote. There's a dish I get, and like the broth in this dish or whatever it is so delicious. Anyway, I tell my wife every time that whenever I eat this, whenever I'm sick in the future, to buy that broth and bring it to me because it'll just knock all of the cold out of me. Whatever I have the flu, it's delicious. So yeah, I did say that, and I think that was a short version of a conversation I had with a student about this Thai dish, and I talked about broth for maybe like 3 minutes. It's ridiculous.
And I actually have a short clip from that conversation that I'm going to share with you all.
I get this dish. I don't know what it's called, but it's like it has like squash in it, and anyway, the broth itself, like I feel like they should just bottle that up as medicine, right?
Really?
Like it's just like if you had a cold or something, or like you were feeling down. Like anyway, it's I'll think of the name at some point, but I always get this certain dish when I go. It has rice. Oh my
Nice.
God. He's like, this guy's out of his mind. All right, that's embarrassing enough. All right, who's next?
I think I'm next. So, true or false? Did you say this? I used to have really long hair. It was a lot. So I feel like I had my day, but you gotta let it go. You gotta embrace it.
I definitely said that. That's true. Like I had like in my senior year in college and then in grad school, my hair grew out. Like I had a giant afro, and then I would get it braided like cornrows or a ponytail, whatever, and it would like come down to like mid back. You can see that those days are long gone because like I can't do this in my life. But when I had hair, I really embraced it, and I leaned into it. And then, as age and genetics started to take over, I had to let it go. So you will not see me trying to relive my youth. I've embraced the bald head. I knew this would come back to haunt me someday. No, I used to have like really long hair. It was like it was a lot. So I feel like I had my day, but still.
Well, you're rocking it. You're rocking it.
Thanks. You gotta let it go. You gotta embrace it, right?
Don't be one of those guys with just the perimeter of your head. No one wants that.
Nah, like the George
Don't do that to
Jefferson.
yourself.
No,
exactly.
No, I had to embrace it.
Exactly.
That's what you gotta do. Try to just do you. That's what it is.
I think I am next. So true or false, did you say this? I think they're pulling around so I can park. You want to keep driving? We're going to go off the grid on this one.
Yeah, I did say that. I think I was with Jesse, maybe Jesse Irwin. Yeah. And we just had this really engaging conversation, and like I was like, we need to continue talking. And I forgot I was really filming. It was like I was in the car with like a family member, and I was like, let's just keep going. And I made the entire staff, DI and Janine and all of them they were like, what the heck is this guy doing? So yeah, I did say that. We started driving through South Oakland, like alleys. He told me where he lived when he was a student. Yeah, it was a trip. I think they're like pulling around so I can park.
Oh, they're trying to get you to park?
I guess.
Drive away.
You want to keep driving?
Yeah, drive away. See what happens.
We're gonna like go off the grid on this one. Let's go. Where you want to go?
All right. We'll go, let's go to South O.
South.
Yeah.
Hey, you see, I was driving. Looked like I was like turning the wheel like for a whole minute there. Yeah, that was a fun interview with Jesse. So let's. So this is a part of the show where I like to highlight an upcoming student event, and so for this one, I'm going to be promoting the Lavender graduation, which is on Friday, April 16th, 2021. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you have to put that in there in the virtual world. It's a virtual ceremony via Zoom. For those of you who don't know, the Lavender graduation at Pitt is a cultural event for the university to recognize and acknowledge the achievements and contributions of LGBTQIA plus students of all races and ethnicities. This is a time-honored tradition, and it's a celebration of the unique journey many of our LGBTQIA plus students face during their time in higher education. If you don't know, the first Lavender graduation in the United States began at the University of Michigan 26 years ago. I don't really say Michigan a lot, University of Michigan, because I'm an Ohio State fan, but for the purposes of this, it's cool, it's history. But 26 years ago, 3 graduates held the first Lavender graduation at Michigan. By 2020, over 220 colleges and universities nationwide have sponsored Lavender graduation. This year's occasion at Pitt is marked by the participation of students, residents, and trainees across the University of Pittsburgh system. This year's event is hosted by the Pitt Queer Professionals, PQP, with co-sponsorship from the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and the Office of Health Sciences, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So great partnership going on there. If you know a graduate who should be honored at this year's ceremony, or you have questions about the event, please email pqp@pitt.edu. So I look forward to attending this year, and if you're interested, please sign up April 16th, 6 to 8 p.m. Via Zoom. So with all that being said, I want to thank our guests today for being here. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for the great information on how to take care of ourselves and the Counseling Center resources and support. Thank you for that segment about true and false. That was really fun to see, and a little bit embarrassing. As I said earlier, I knew those things were going to come back to haunt me, and I'm really afraid about what else is on the editing room floor, so we'll see in future episodes. Last but not least, please continue to take care of business, take care of each other, and most importantly, take care of yourself.